Hey everyone! Today I just wanted to make a quick video about Elden Ring Nightreign, specifically my wish list for future updates in the game. A lot of these things are fairly unrealistic, but I hope to see at least some of them implemented in the future. I obviously hold no real power to influence the game going forward, so this is just a way for me to quickly vent my thoughts. First of all, I think that Nightreign is a spectacular game, and the slight issues it has I consider to be very minimal in the grand scheme of things. That said, they do exist, and they definitely could be improved. I'll get the obvious out of the way first, in the form of new content. Everyone agrees that more content needs to be added in the future, but some people have different priorities for what they'd like to see added, and I just want to give my thoughts on that. I think the most important things that could be added are obviously Night Lords, and I think it's safe to assume that there will be more of them in the form of DLCs and expansions in the future. But aside from that, I would love to see more variation in the map. Contrary to what some people think, I don't necessarily think adding a new map layout would add much to the game. If there were 2 or even 3 map layouts, then all that would really do is necessitate learning the strategies for different maps in case you find them, and while it's true that that would add variety, I tend to think it might be a little more annoying than anything else. Instead, I would just like to see more visual variation. When starting an expedition against Night Aspect, the sky changes color and the music is different, and I think that even that helps add a lot of distinction. I think having different skyboxes, foliage colors, tree types, and ambient effects in random circulation, kind of like that Night Lord effect, would do a lot to help visually make things more interesting. And I think that an increase in visual distinction would just be very nice. I also think that adding 1 or 2 more points of interest would do tons to help shake things up. Routing in Nightreign is one of the aspects that I find the most fun, but it has become very formulaic and thus can be a little samey, especially since the current meta of using Everjails sort of has you going to all the Everjails on the map, which are always in the same locations in the world. I think having just a couple more points of interest would make routing feel much more interesting again, sort of like it did on launch. When it comes to Nightfarers, I honestly don't think that they are a priority. The 8 that we have feel really fun to play, and they feel unique from each other and have different interesting playstyles that cover a good variety of equipment and upgrades that you can find. I think that taking the Risk of Rain 2 route and adding alternative character skills and ults would be really interesting. If every character had an alternate skill and ult, and they could be mixed and matched, that would massively change the team composition options. Currently, according to this Reddit post by Reddit Sibiri, there are 120 possible team compositions as is. If my math is correct, which it very well might not be, having just 1 alternate skill and ult for each character would increase the number of possible team compositions to 5,984. Now, I don't necessarily think every character needs an alternate for both skill and ult. For example, an alternate character skill for Executor and Revenant would change their playstyle completely. And while that wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing, I definitely would not complain if they just got alternate ults instead. Now, some other things I would like to see for the Nightfarers is for each of them to have a few extra weapon type proficiencies. As a proficiency referring to their custom, like their specific moveset. Raider has proficiency with great axes, colossal swords, and colossal weapons, whereas every other Nightfarer only has proficiency with 1 weapon type. So why not expand that? Give Executor Twin Blade proficiency, give Duchess Thrusting Weapon proficiency, give somebody Straight Sword proficiency, etc. The proficiency system is really cool in theory, but it also unfortunately encourages you to play with just 1 type of weapon in each character. And I think that this solution is just giving everyone more proficiencies, similar to what Raider has. And lastly for Nightfarers, I think adding a way to change stat distribution could be very interesting. Maybe you could buy relics from the Sigil shop that give certain Nightfarers a different stat loadout. I'd love to see an Arcane Duchess, Faith Wilder, and of course Strength Revenant. Letting certain characters benefit from other weapons could make for very interesting games using their skills, and I think if anything it would just be fun to play around with. I'd also love to see some more DLC content. Just add the DLC weapon types, and some more DLC bosses and items. And actually, just add a bunch more bosses from the base game too. Why is it that we get to see Morgott and Godric, but no other main bosses? Why not have Mohg, Godfrey, Malekith, etc.? The main bosses are, in my opinion, much better than the side ones that were placed in Nightreign, and I think it's a missed opportunity not to add them. And while we're at it, just add more callback bosses too. The fact that we only got 6 Dark Souls bosses is pretty disappointing considering how prominently Nameless King was featured in the trailer, and everyone assumed it would be a main selling point of Nightreign. And you know what? I just want to see more of pretty much everything. More weapons, more passives, more relic abilities, more shifting earths, etc. I think increasing the variety of pretty much everything will help a lot with the interest and longevity of the game. Now, aside from new content, there are a number of things I'd like to see improved and or changed. First of all, and most importantly to me, is the lock-on. Everyone knows that Souls lock-on is not the best, but Nightreign has somehow managed to be the absolute worst of them all. I have lost count of the amount of times I've tried to lock onto a boss and instead done a full 180 and locked onto an enemy that is literally behind a wall. I don't fully understand how the lock-on system works, but that's partially because it barely does. I think there are a few easy-ish ways to fix this. First of all, make bosses have priority. If I'm fighting a boss and I hit the lock-on button, I'm not trying to lock on to the random enemy a mile away. Just lock on to the boss. Second, make the camera button to move lock-ons more sensitive. A lot of the time, if I try to shift my lock-on with the right stick, it just doesn't work at all. This is especially annoying when trying to lock onto a downed teammate, because they're on the ground and the lock-on point for bosses is usually a little off the ground. And 3, make lock-on points on bosses just better. For some reason, tons of bosses have lock-on points that are just in terrible spots. For example, if you're fighting a dragon and you lock onto its foot, the lock-on point is actually fairly high up on the ankle. This means that if you're right next to the foot to hit it in melee, your camera is panned upwards, so you can't actually see your surroundings, which is just incredibly annoying. I'd really love to have lock-on points that are in places that I will actually be hitting. Aside from lock-on, some of the online functionality can be improved. First of all, the penalty for leaving a game should be more substantial and also only affect the first person leaving. If someone leaves a run, having only 2 players just feels bad, even with the downscaling. The remaining 2 players shouldn't be forced to continue wasting their time, but also the penalty really isn't enough to stop people from leaving, which can really fuck up your runs. I'd also like to see a better way to communicate with teammates. I don't necessarily think a voice chat is the answer to that, because it could very well get toxic considering how the Elden Ring community is. But some sort of in-game chat might be a nice addition, or even something simple like making prattling plates not require an animation, so you could actually use them for communication instead of just spamming them while waiting for your teammate in the spirit shelter. I'd also like some sort of relic building functionality. Maybe you could spend Merc to put effects from one relic onto another. These days, after every run, I just get shitty relics that have 3 good effects, but only 1 good effect per character. Being able to swap some of them around with some amount of minor customization would be a very nice addition. Alternatively, some sort of relic trading would be really nice. I have a lot of really good relics for Guardian, and I fucking hate Guardian, whereas one of my friends really enjoys Guardian, and I could give some relics to him. In exchange, he could give me some good, like, Raider relics or something, and I just think that would be a really nice addition. And lastly, I just want to list a whole bunch of minor changes that I'd appreciate. Make Revenant summons transparent so you can actually fucking see past Frederick. Add some sort of visual indicator for the insta-kill timer when in the rain so you actually know how much time you have. Add some more Central Castle variants so I can see trolls less. Let Raider dismiss his ult so it doesn't trap bosses or block doorways. Add a more likely to be targeted weapon passive for the Guardians and Executors who want to tank. Add a way to get high rarity seals similar to how Arise gives you good staves. Obviously just some general rebalancing of bosses and equipment. Add some more types of enemies that you can spawn in the sparring grounds so I can actually test Raider's skill against an enemy that doesn't fall down as soon as you press the button. And lastly, for the love of God, please fix the ability descriptions to make them actually useful.